You can anticipate they're going to have, a strong vote for Putin in that region, just to try and send the message that these parts of Ukraine are now part of Russia.
Voting has begun in Russia's presidential election. But who's going to win? Let's speak to RUSI's Director of International Security, Dr Neil Melvin. Hi, Neil.
Hi, Matt.
We talk a lot about this being a big election year. Half the world's population could go to the polls, but there are elections and then there are elections. Is this really an election?
Well, obviously, we're not really sort of standing by to see who's going to win. I mean, that's pretty clear. We know it's going to be Vladimir Putin. The only really interesting thing probably is going to be, and perhaps this is a bit for the nerds, but what kind of percentage is he going to get? Because it's not a contested election. It's really just a sign of, how much legitimacy can Putin eke out of what's obviously going to be a very staged process.
So just take us through the process then. What is on the ballot paper? What are the options available to Russians?
Well, I mean, there are a few candidates, but the ones that they've allowed on the ballot paper alongside Putin are people who are really kind of loyal to him. And it's like the leaders of the Liberal Democrat Party, the Communist Party. These are kind of in-house parties which are very much controlled by the Kremlin. They're there to sort of appeal to a few diehard communists, but they're not really going to challenge Putin. Anyone who was serious was kept off the ballot paper. A couple of candidates tried to run on an anti-war agenda. They were ruled out by the Central Electoral Commission. And of course, I mean, the most famous opposition leader, Navalny, who was in jail in the Arctic, was killed ahead of the election. So there's no really serious opposition figure at all in Russia these days.
And to what extent are people, when people do go and then put the cross in the box for Putin, is it because there are, I suppose, there are elections where they are an obvious fix, when he's just announced that the president's got 99.9% of the vote. What is the mood amongst Russians? Are there some people who are supporting him genuinely, as they would do if they were free and open, fair elections? Are there people who are fed a diet of pro-Putin propaganda, so that's why they're of that opinion? And are there people who actually would like a change but have no way of registering that?
Well, I think it's a combination of all those things. I mean, Putin's been in power since 2000, so and he's systematically excluded or actually had killed all of the potential people who could challenge him. So there is no one who people can really focus on these days. The state media is putting out a message about supporting Putin. But he does actually have some support, in part because there isn't an opposition candidate, but he is perceived by the Russian population as reversing this chaotic situation they had in the 1990s. A lot of violence, criminality, disorder. The country was in a mess, and they feel he's put Russia back on the world stage. But there are also many people who I think would like to see a change. I mean, imagine a whole generation has grown up only knowing Putin, and at the moment, he's going to be re-elected till 2030. He could stay in power till 2036. So they're going to have Putin forever. And people in Russia do want a change, some of them in the big cities, but there's just no way they can really affect this through the elections, and they can't really even go out on the streets and protest anymore.
Just finally, Neil, will there be voting taking place in the parts of Ukraine that Putin's occupied?
Yeah, and this is a really important point, because what the election, one of the things they're trying to show is that everything is normal, that these territories are now part of Russia, they've been incorporated, and this kind of legitimizes the whole operation. They've used this tactic before when Russia was involved in the conflict in Chechnya, that they ran these kind of sham elections, and they had the Russian military voting there. So this is going to happen in the occupied parts of Ukraine. The Russian military is voting. It's online, a lot of it, so there's going to be enormous fraud. And you can anticipate they're going to have a strong vote for Putin in that region, just to try and send the message that these parts of Ukraine are now part of Russia. Ukraine may be trying to disrupt that. We can anticipate that they are trying to kind of disrupt any voting that's taking place, but of course it's very difficult in the midst of this war.
It was really fascinating. Thanks so much for that. It's Dr Neil Melvin from RUSI, Director of International Security there. And voting taking place in Russia or over the weekend. So plenty of analysis of that, I'm sure.